Let's go back to the UN headquarters. The Russian representative is addressing the assembly. Let's listen.
Distinguished Minister of Foreign Affairs of Cuba, Bruno Rodriguez Parilla. The Russian Federation aligns itself with the statement on behalf of the Group of Friends in Defense of the UN Charter. In our national capacity, we would like to note the following. We thank the UN Secretary-General for the latest report on this agenda item, which records the broad consensus for the removal of US sanctions against Cuba. Russia, together with the overwhelming majority of members of the global community, firmly calls for the immediate lifting of the illegitimate American embargo of Cuba. Washington's unilateral restrictive measures against Havana are a gross violation of the fundamental principles and norms of international law, and they undermine cooperation in the fight against global challenges. The sanctions war unleashed by the United States against Cuba to achieve its main aim, the overthrow of a government they don't favor, is a clear example of perfidious interference in the internal affairs of an independent state. At the humanitarian level, the embargo is the main barrier to the full realization of human rights in Cuba, first and foremost in the area of healthcare, education, and energy and food security. The economic blockade of Cuba is hindering the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals and limiting Havana's opportunities to invest in the most promising sectors of the economy, to support the social sphere, and to service its foreign debt. These long-standing, illegitimate sanctions measures are hindering the functioning of the national financial sector and preventing local economic operators from making full use of the opportunities of global financial markets and institutions. The colossal losses from the U.S. embargo for the island's economy speak for themselves. From March 2024 to February 2025, the damage dealt by the embargo rose by 49% compared with the previous period and amounted to more than $7.5 billion, exceeding the damages dealt to the country in 2023 to 2024 by $2.5 billion. If it weren't for the blockade, Cuba's GDP would have risen by more than 9% in 2024, which is one of the highest growth rates in the Western Hemisphere. The extraterritorial application of sanctions regimes is also illegal. In the practice of interstate relations, we are seeing the introduction of the principle of the responsibility of third countries, their authorities, citizens, and business for maintaining and developing mutually beneficial commercial and economic links with those against whom restrictive actions have been applied. We are essentially talking about interference in the internal affairs of sovereign states, the essentially neo-colonial practice of coercion to comply with another state's illegal sanctions restrictions. Despite the pressure exerted by Washington, Havana is continuing its sovereign political course. Cuba is active in the international arena, where it deservedly enjoys a great deal of authority. We consider to be unacceptable the pernicious practice of labeling Cuba, in particular by accusing it of human trafficking, when what we're actually talking about is the provision of needed assistance, needed care by Cuban medical specialists that are working in difficult conditions, first and foremost in the countries of Latin America, Africa, and the Asia-Pacific. It is absurd that Cuba remains on the list of state sponsors of terrorism, which is nothing other than yet another illegitimate instrument of political and economic pressure on the Cuban government. Havana has a spotless reputation as an active participant in international cooperation on counterterrorism. In continuation of our consistent stance and guided by the fundamental principles of the UN Charter, we once again support the draft resolution demanding the ending of the embargo without preconditions. Thank you.
I thank the
Well, we will listen to the statements of the Russian representative in Valencia at the UN General Assembly. As the Assembly continues, the plenary continues to debate on the resolution, the necessity to lift the U.S. blockade against Cuba. The Russian representative was also referring to the negative impact that the blockade has on the development of the people and was praising the work that is trying to be tarnished by the U.S., the work that Cuba does in terms of solidarity, of medical support across different countries in Latin America, Africa, and the Pacific, the Asia Pacific as well. And this was defending the humanitarian work of Cuba, calling for the immediate delisting of the nation from the list of state-sponsors terrorism, and also encouraging the international community as well as Russia will vote to support the resolution and call for the immediate end of the U.S. blockade on Cuba. We'll have more